Thank you. I'd like to call to order the September 9th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please, Brandy?
Yes. Hanson.
Here.
Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Brink.
Here.
Oletsky.
Here.
Kays.
Here.
And Ford. You might be muted, Diana. Oh, no, I don't think I can.
She can unmute by pressing *6. She has to do it herself.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be?
If you're on the phone, can you press *6 to unmute yourself, Diana? And maybe she stepped away for a minute. For right now, we can count her absent, and then if she joins in, which I imagine she will since she was at the last meeting, we'll add her to the roll call. I mean, you can see she's still listed online.
Oh, that's why, because I had us all muted. Okay, Diana. And everyone.
Yep.
Sorry.
All right.
So we're in the Plan Commission and we're doing roll call again.
Oh, I'm sorry to be causing so many problems today.
No.
I did-
That was my bad.
Okay, well, thank you. I wondered what was happening.
Oh, technology. Okay, so Ford.
Here.
Perfect, thank you. And then we have Dolly, Culhane, and Spire absent. We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Brandy. Moving on in the agenda, item 3 is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda that someone from the public would wish to talk about, there will be time at the end of the meeting, and please just let Brandy know. Moving on to item 4 is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion and a second?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with adding a discussion item under new business regarding decks and not attached to a house.
I have a motion with an amendment.
I'll second that.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 5 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have the approval of the minutes from the August 19th meeting. Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 5B is the approval of the minutes from the August 19th city and county special meeting. Can I get a motion and a second for approval?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6 on the agenda is our regular agenda. 6A is commission consideration of resolution number 2021-44, the concept plan of CAX edition. Brandy, will you take it over?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So this is phase 2 of the CAX residential subdivision. This is located just north of Lake Pelican and situated in between 33rd Street Southwest, where you would turn by Dollar General off of Highway 212, and then 42nd Street Southwest, which is a township road that does have a mat of asphalt pavement that leads to this development in the county. And otherwise, the entire thing has been annexed and zoned. So phase 1 has been developed already and platted, and so they use the zoning districts of R1 single family, R2 single family attached, and R3 multifamily residential. And then when they annexed this area in, it was all, they brought it in as A1 agricultural. And then so that will be the subsequent action, is looking at the rezone and the various districts they plan on using in this phase will be R1 and then a PUD, which we'll get into more with the next item. But so this concept plan has been vetted probably ever since starting in March or sooner, And we have worked very closely with the applicant. It's Steve Horning, and he has Cax Lakeside Edition Incorporated. So what we're looking at with the PUD zoning will be these rural residential lots. And so on average, the lots are 2 acres in this area. And then the smaller lots with urban density will be your more typical, that'll have urban density. So it'll be your typical, 9,000 minimum to 15,000 square foot lot. And another thing that is unique to this concept plan is it does provide that acreage living that some people desire and that are not readily available in town. It is difficult to allow for that in city limits, but I think that we've made some compromises with the PUD on how to make that doable, and really is something that we'd like to look at as an actual zoning district in the future to allow without having to use a PUD.
So the reason for the PUD and not just these lots exceed 9,000 square feet, we use the PUD because?
And I'll get into that when I'm explaining the PUD more specifically, but basically because we had them come up with building envelopes, so the setbacks are greater than typical R1 designations, and that comes down to utilities, a lot of it, just so you're not losing too much amps or things of that nature, I believe, and Bert may come up and expand on that with his knowledge. So that really, and then also we are using rural street sections. So in this area that will be zoned R1, that's single family residential. 37th Street and to this point of this lot here will all be your urban street section to our engineering design standards with curb and gutter. And then once we get out into the rural residential PUD zoning, we'll turn back into the rural street section, which still meets our engineering design standards. And it just allows for less infrastructure improvements for less density. So, and then they also have the area. A lot of the times a rural street section with having open ditches can be problematic. We'd rather see it curb and gutter system with a storm sewer and accommodate the drainage that way. But these lots are able to provide larger drainage easements so that they can accommodate with the open drainage and stormwater collection, which is nice for it being so close to the lake as well for more water quality. And then you'll see they do have wetland areas. This is the only jurisdictional wetland, and I think that they point that out here further down. And that will be encompassed by an easement. And then same with all of the wetland areas. They will actually, their association that they're establishing will maintain those areas. So it won't be the city's, usually the city takes over the maintenance of individual detention ponds when it's in a residential neighborhood. But they have formed an association. So they will take care of the maintenance of these areas and then also have them be in separate, with an easement so that they are not being encroached upon or filled later on.
Are the homeowners going to have individual sewer systems or septic system, or is this going to be like to the city?
Yep.
Utilities?
It'll be city.
2 acre lots? Wow.
City
Nice.
utility. And yeah, and they, we don't, this is within with its proximity to the lake, it's within the aquifer district. They're the aquifer protection district, so can't do septics. And so, yeah, they will have all city services. But that's where the building envelopes that are shown on the PUD plan, that's where they came into play because we didn't want somebody building so far back where then your water pressure or whatnot, you have long lines of stagnant water, potentially with the service line, probably not so much that situation, but I know for sure with the electricity that could be problematic with the with the depth of the lots. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you.
So again, Brandy, back to my initial question, is the main reason with the R1, we can't do rural section streets, so that's one of the reasons for the PUD?
Yes, yep, and good point there, because you can do, if you have less than one house per acre, the engineering design standards allow for the rural street section. And this development is at 0.6 houses per acre, so they are under that density.
The width of the roads, are they going to still be 38 feet? Are they going to be 24 feet, the driving lanes, or?
They will be 24, I'll show you, I'll pull up that section. So 17th is going to be the main, the collector route. And that will be 12-foot driving lanes with 4-foot shoulders paved.
Parking?
No parking on the street, no. I mean, and a lot of, the driveways will be pretty long where it wouldn't really be conducive to park there. And then also we will have, let me point this out, we will have the bike trail that was approved by Park Board to extend from phase 1. I'll get to this map here, even though it's not, I don't think it's shown on this one. But basically where this, and it is shown on another view, but this is just going to be easier to show you guys. So where phase 1 ends here, it comes over and then it comes up and then runs on the south side of 18th Avenue and then on the south side of 17th Avenue. And that does follow our major trail system through the Park and Rec. And like I said, that was approved by Park Board with much discussion. They want to extend the trail in that area. It won't be on the shoulder of the road. It will be offset. So you'll see here in this view, it'll go street, ditch, bike trail.
Right.
So then you're not having your bike trail in the ditch.
So is that a wider right-of-way then to accommodate that?
They're providing easements.
And then the other question would be, is there be dedicated park land, or is it just the trail that they're doing for this?
Just the trail. So the area that they're giving for the trail suffices for their 5%.
So where's the closest place kiddos can go jumping around and play in this area?
Well, for one, all of these lots are very large.
I understand that, but
they have that area, or there is the up in here. So it is within the quarter mile. It might be getting close over here, but they felt that the trail was more conducive for the recreational amenity, just because these lots are so big that most likely they would use their yard instead of going to the park.
what does the comprehensive land use plan say about parks? I can't remember off the top of my head. Is it just that we want a neighborhood park within a half a mile of each other?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we're at, that park is within that half-mile distance. And so that is in our comprehensive land use plan, and then that shows the park location radius that we'd like to achieve.
That's was my question. We're still okay from that, from a land use plan perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I will open the public hearing. If there is anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this concept plan, please feel free to approach the mic and do so, or join us online.
My name's Steve Harning. I have just a couple of comments. If you'd go to page 21. If I can find my 21. Setbacks. We have a 50-foot setback and here it says 100 feet. I think the 100 feet is wrong, it should be 50-foot setback,
Oh, okay.
okay? And then, because in our covenants, it's a 50-foot setback.
Right, I'll show you where, and that, that's good, because this is just a staff report, so it could have been a mistake there.
Right.
But for the plan, I'll show you where I pulled that, and just to make sure that we're,
No, I do appreciate that clarification. I see it 50 foot in one spot and 100 foot in another spot,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that clarification.
And then on page 27, you have the same issue.
Thank you.
So as you can see, I read it anyway.
This is a long time coming, isn't it, Steve?
Been an awful long time. We had spent a lot of time with the park board.
I can remember these conversations many years ago.
Yeah,
On this
yeah, this
development.
is, yeah, it's
yeah, I don't know.
quite a change since '08, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, no problem. That's why you think I read it
Yeah, usually people don't even pay attention to that.
anyway. No, I had plenty of time.
Steve, are you setting in your covenants maximum sizes for storage buildings and things like that?
I'm not sure. We do, it is covered in our covenants.
Yeah.
For what size?
I'm just,
I
for
see
the
in the,
for the PUDs, I was just asking that
in the
question.
PUD plans, it said maximum building height for an accessory building, 35 feet, maximum sidewall height, 16 feet. So at least it's
What are you
talked
gonna
about for.
Are you gonna allow steel siding and those types of things to occur out there?
Yes, because it's a rural setting,
Yeah.
so kind of like a Morton type building, I'm not trying to pick on names, but everybody kind of knows what a Morton type building is. We're trying to allow that as such for the flexibility.
Sure.
I can see these lots, these houses and sheds and stuff being kind of like that addition just to the southwest.
Right,
It's gonna-
yep. Yeah, that was about 1998 is when I did those. Those were 2-acre lots, and Todd's really familiar with it. There was 12 lots there, and they were 2 acres apiece. And they had 0 covenants on those. Now, I'm not saying if smart, but we got lucky. That's right.
Well, and the nice thing about these lots being within city limits is they'll have the city services and to have the sewer.
So that's my selling point, you know. We see a lot of these 2-acre lots being sold, but none of them have the advantage of city sewer and water, I don't think.
No, they're just not available, so.
Staff question, have you guys thought about this further out, that when this property becomes fully developed and the need to look at Horning's third edition, would we ever looking at annexation or force annexing that property to bring that into the city? Or are we looking at this always be an island from a long-range development? Did you guys have any of those conversations?
You know, it's same with the Kittleson edition. It would be on if they approach the city, but that they would bring it up to city services before we would take them in.
Okay.
One more thing I might note too is I did have a conversation with John West. He's with the township. And we'll have more discussion, but this will come at more at the time of plating. And we've already talked to Steve and Colin about this. We made it as a note from our design review team that we'll discuss what types of agreements, because it was a fire code requirement that 17th, there had to be secondary access. So you see 17th does connect over to 42nd, which is a township road. And so we want to make sure that we have agreements in place because of the city's development, it's not the township's responsibility for maintenance and for the additional costs. So we'll continue to work through that before we get to the plating. Now, because the concept plan is only approved by the Plan Commission, and then the rezone and the PUD plan goes Plan Commission, then 2 hearings at council, and then we can bring the plat forward. So at the time of plating is when we'll have those agreements memorialized, but at least it gives us some time to work together on it and find out what's reasonable.
I'm glad Brandy brought that up. I know Luke Muller, the county zoning officer, brought that up to me today that Mr. West had contacted and Pelican Township had some concerns because it's just a 2-inch mat that sits on top of that road. And theoretically, we plant 45, 50 houses. It could be 300, 400, 500 extra road trips on that road, and it's not built for, even though it's a major collector in the county system, it's not built for that. And then the question becomes, what happens as the road to the north deteriorates based upon traffic, maybe over the next 7, 8, 10 years, and the township has very limited resources. So I think that was their concern.
Yeah, I think that if it's something that we could look at too, and just throwing it out there, if it is really for the emergency services, that we put some sort of gate or something. I mean, we'll discuss it. We'll get with all of the necessary parties and figure out what
There might be a short-term and a long-term solution
Yeah.
to it.
Yep. So we just wanted to make that clear that we will. We'll have that memorialized by the time of plating. This is just the concept plan. It's required. They have to have that connectivity. It's good for traffic all around. And then also you see 38th will extend to the north. And then eventually that would hit 212, which is another issue that we are currently dealing with, but doesn't affect CACs because they are placed in the right location per the major street plan. So
38 would be a major collector.
yeah, I think it's minor. A
Minor collector, excuse me, because
Yeah.
it's on the quarter line.
Yeah, and then eventually 33rd. It's a rural street section right now. That would be something that should. It's tough in this area because of Lake Pelican. It cuts everything off, so we know nothing more is going to be coming from the south. So. We'll just,
Does 33rd get widened? Because that is kind of a narrow, I mean, there's not much of
it
a shoulder there.
should be to city standards. And so however that's dealt with in the future will be
That's a
a
city
task.
problem because that's a city street, correct?
yeah.
Well, it's a half city street except where you're down by Kilson's, and that becomes a township again too, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is typically so for example, we do have in here that Steve would be required to improve 42nd Street. That property owner at that time, the successor, would be responsible to build that portion of the street. 2nd Street, Greg Hofteaser's River Ridge Edition, he builds that half street and then actually puts 4 foot over. So there's different ways to go about it, and it just kind of depends on where the development of the street is.
And I think that's something I talked to Brandy. I think really we do need to have some sort of firm policy when we're talking about growing onto streets that are going to be major collectors or minor arterials or major, it's just because we might want to be looking at it. If it's that important for the city growth, you can see this already right on the west side of the street. There's people that live there. They have no intention of ever paying for a city street standard. You're talking a forced annexation somewhere down the road if that's as you grow into these areas. So when we look at future things coming out onto major collectors or minor arterials, we may be looking at wanting to annex the entire right-of-way, at least that part, and that becomes, if the developer, the city has to share the cost, that's something that we'd have to be looking at doing.
Or an assessment project.
Because in the end, when in this situation, you'll never get those 3 properties to pay anything towards a city designed street on there without forced annexation, because the city has no authority to place an assessment on those county properties.
Right. Well, and that's something that we would have to look into with Matt Roby, the city attorney, and Heath, city engineer, public works director. So those are all things that we, run into. But if we can get a good policy in place, that would be good for consistency, because there are plenty of these situations that are very fun.
This is a good problem to have. We're growing and the city is expanding, but as we grow, we start to go into areas that aren't the city anymore. There's township and there's county roads and those types of things. And so I think whatever we can do to improve intergovernmental cooperation on those types of things, we're just that much further ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And we want to maintain a good relationship with county and township, and because we need to work together to be successful. So I think we're all on board with that for sure. All right.
I think I'll, close the public hearing and ask for a motion in a second on, oh, I'm sorry. I'll leave the public hearing open. I'm sorry, I didn't give everyone an opportunity.
My name's, excuse me, my name's Mark Keeneston. I represent Pelican Plaza, which just owns the land to the north of the addition here, where the irrigation systems are. We got an issue going on which doesn't relate to CAX, but it's on 38th Street there, and going up to the highway. I just thought it was something that we should bring up at this point in time. I know Steve's got a street in there, and Brandy and stuff are gonna visit another time about it, but I want to note in the minutes that that there's an issue, I feel, with the 38th Street going up there.
Yeah, and I think just for the record, I mean, the city's comprehensive land use plan stipulates that there has to be a major collector or minor collector street on every quarter line. And being that 38th Street is the quarter line, we are going to have to find some way to have connectivity from that point to the north. How it goes, Mark, it's going to have to be figured out.
Yeah,
But we
but I
just have-
just wanted to note it today that
Yeah.
this. And then also I want to represent myself here a little bit too. I live on 42nd Street. Going back to your comment about the street, we start bringing cars out to the west. I'm not opposed to the development, but that road is going to break up pretty fast. We're already having trouble out there with it.
You're not on the township board, are you, Mark?
No. I live just to the north there on 42nd where the blue line goes around, right there. That's where I live and stuff. And you were commenting earlier about the street out there with the 2-inch mat, but no, it won't. So,
Yeah.
okay, that's all I had.
Okay.
So.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I guess, because I'm not very bright, when do we address both of these streets, both 33rd and 42nd? I mean, and then someday 38th, I mean, someday when that goes in, obviously that goes in because that's going to be all new, but the two existing, I mean, does the street department look at that? Is that something they decide that we need to?
So we
Develop?
have our design review team that Rob Bainan is a part of, and then also with Heath Von Eye and Justin Peterson, the engineers. So we look at all that. 38th, because it's within this annexed portion of the development, will be put in. It'll be stubbed to the extent of the development so that when somebody annexes to the north, that it's ready to be connected to. Otherwise, we run into situations like that, then who's putting it in and at what point. And so that's kind of with 42nd and 33rd. I mean, really where they're at today, and just because there's portions that are not annexed, there's portions that have already been developed altogether, trying to avoid situations like that for the future. But then they are difficult because it would be pointless to have this half section. I shouldn't say pointless, but to have them improve a half section to an urban standard because it's rural, and we would want to see that as urban. So it's really, I mean, something that the city will have to really.
33rd, then going the other way where the dollar store is. So there's
Yep.
just one section that right there, that brown area there, that is not annexed in the city, or even those homes along the lake are not.
Everything on the east side of the road is in the county.
All of that is. Oh.
Yeah,
Okay, so
everything
even the
colored.
residential homes are not.
Kittleson's addition is all in the county.
Everything colored is
Gotcha.
in the city limits. And so what's tough when the city grows into the township or county roads, then you're having the ditch and the rural section where you might not have everybody in at the same time. And so then at what point would we change that into the urban section?
Okay, so let
as-
me ask that question. At what point would we ask all those residents that section to come in then?
Well, you can't, the question, you have two options. On one end, you can have a petitioned annexation, so when the property that's immediately adjacent to the road decides to petition in, then you could hold their feet to the fire to say, we're gonna improve that section of the road, and you're gonna have to do some sort of an assessment process for the property on the west side. Or, at some point in time, if the city feels that because its property is, shows a benefit to the city and we're providing services, you can go through a forced annexation. Forced annexations are difficult, they're messy, and legally full of pitfalls, but they can happen. So what cities need to be doing is they need to be figuring out, before we develop the R2 and R4 development and everything along the west side of 33rd Street, we should have a policy on what do we do with that street. Do we take the whole right-of-way in when the development starts? And, it stays in a rural setting, but we hold some sort of an assessment against that or refusal of right to protest. And so when the next side, the east side comes in, then that's when we fix it. And that's one way of approaching it. The other way of approaching it is, well, we'll just make the guy on the west side build a half street. And when the guy in the east comes in and you can take a look at by Jefferson School, it takes forever and a long time. Or Bob
And-
Fox's ground on the north side of 14th Avenue. I mean, those are the things that you look at, and that's historically what the city's policy has been for many, many years, right, wrong, or indifferent.
But then you run into the issue that it's a rural street section versus turning it to urban. And where the curb height, with the curb and gutter, storm sewer, all of that. So it's a very multifaceted issue.
That property about 8 years ago to the east there adjacent to the lake, they had asked, could we get our street plowed by city services, because the city services come down and plow down into Cax Edition, and, so it was right adjacent, and we, at that time
Yeah.
said, well, no, you're not part of the city, we don't plow outside, you'd have to annex, and in order to annex, you'd have to bring it up to street standard, and then it was
sewer.
It's an ongoing.
sewer, because
it-
there's separate.
We're talking $1 million project
So
out
then
there.
they decided that they weren't gonna do it because it was $1 million project, so, I know it'd be very tough to get that property, all those properties annexed in at this time because of how much it would cost, and
Yeah.
there's so many individual landowners.
And
So-
it is an ongoing.
So is Horning's third
discussion
edition in the city?
That's that was the question I talked about at the
Okay.
beginning, was that Hornings is it's called Lake Park zoning, it's in the county. Because it's 1,000 feet back from Lake Pelican, the county allows 2-acre density development to occur. And that's how Steve brought that ground in originally, right? Isn't that how we did that?
So, yes,
Okay, so not, because I like the project, so don't get me wrong, I'm just asking questions. So why don't we just put our feet down and say, until all these sections come in, we're not going to allow this one to come in? Or instead of jumping around, Todd. So, I'm just trying to learn here a little bit.
I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to promote growth, and we're trying to facilitate a development to occur, realizing as we grow into rural areas where there is development on the fringe of the community, we are going to have development issues. And if we don't have policies in place to handle them, this is where we get to in life.
So why don't we just let them stay in the county?
Because the county wouldn't allow this development to occur.
They're already in the city, they've been annexed and they're zoned
Yes.
already.
But even if Steve wanted to do this development, he couldn't because under the counties and the joint jurisdiction rules, he's not allowed to do it. He could only build it within 1,000 feet of the lake. He couldn't do anything north of 18th.
yeah, and we would rather see, like, with the joint jurisdiction, with the city and county working together, we would rather see development occur in city limits, and so they do have
I
very strict
agree.
rules.
I'm just asking the question so I understand why
Oh,
we're,
good question. It's a good question.
That's
Public-
our daily occurrence there. Well, trying to figure these situations out, so. But this concept plan, does meet our ordinance requirements and, has went through the pertinent reviews. So that's why it's before you today.
One last crazy question. On your purple map, the dotted lines that go like halfway through, is that showing buildable area? Because or what is that showing me?
Is that the PUD plan?
Yeah,
Yeah. I think those are probably buildable areas.
So you won't be building towards the lake frontage then at all?
Structure only, or is that accessory buildings as well?
I
Do you know what I mean?
believe primary, but that's for the PUD plan. So if we end the concept plan item, if we can discuss that and then we can talk PUD? Because they're two separate items.
Okay. But, okay, so that is like buildable area then, or something like that?
Yep,
So-
that's
okay,
the envelope,
Okay.
but yeah, but we'll discuss that one next. And get into more detail there.
Yeah. Getting ahead of yourself. We're still on item 6A, not 6B yet. Public hearing is still open. Is there anyone else from the public that would wish to comment on the concept plan before we get into the preliminary plan? All right. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for commission action on the concept plan.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6B is, we're talking about CAX and the PUD development. So Brandy, do you want to jump into that?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So with the concept plan, we did kind of touch on it briefly of what is being proposed for the zoning for the CAX Phase 2 addition. And so specifically, they are asking for the R1 single-family residential district where they have that urban densities where they will have those urban street sections. And then also with the PUD planned unit development, and that will be for the use of a rural residential district, as we kind of have discussed already. And then with going with the PUD zoning, we made it specific in ordinance that they submit a PUD plan that shows the certain things that are required by ordinance, which I have listed, or I thought I did. But we can go through those of what they have to show in their PUD plan, which is a scaled down version of the concept plan that we just looked at. And that's basically looking at what makes it unique to why it cannot use conventional zoning designations or districts, which I've kind of already touched on as well with that concept plan discussion. But it's really to achieve the 2-acre density of not having more than 1 foot per, or 1 foot, 1 house per acre, and so that they can use the rural street section. And then they do have those building envelopes with the setbacks. And my staff report does say that it's 100-foot front yard setback, which 50 foot is actually only required. So don't get that confused. Some other points that I haven't already mentioned, like Steve had said, they will allow for the metal siding within this PUD district for the accessory structures so that they can have larger shop type or just what you would see in a rural setting. And that is
Not corrugated steel, right, Steve?
right.
Our Schausches?
He
Talked about it all?
And actually, Steve or Colin, if you guys want to explain, if you want to open the public
I'll open the
hearing,
public hearing.
and then they can kind of give you more specific detail. I think that they restrict. I think you say how much minimum living quarters and stuff need to be in place, or at least for the house square footage.
Yeah, I see it's listed that the minimum main level size is 1,500 square feet is one of the PUD requirements. I see that was listed.
Your design review committee for Steve is going to be for those to look at everybody's house designs. Is that what that committee's going to do? Well, that should make that go well.
Steve, am I allowed to put a shed up only?
No.
No, and you can't have a vacant lot. If you buy it, you build it so the city can make real estate taxes, so they can pay for the streets on 33rd Street and 42nd Street.
says that in there.
I don't think I got positive on that one, but
So they have to build a house within so many years, or?
I'm trying to read through the covenant. It says no mobile homes or campers are permitted.
I think they have it in there that you have to have the primary, it's same as city ordinance, that they kept a lot of things consistent with city ordinance, that you cannot have an accessory structure if you don't have a primary.
That's right.
Right, so I just can't build my big shed and pull my $250,000 camper into the shed
That's correct.
without a house.
Right. The floor area of, if I may interrupt you, buildings and garages in our covenants, they shall not be less than should be not less than 1,500 square feet. We don't want a little shed sticking out there. And, the setbacks are, we got that.
What about kennels and dog runs and things like that?
I haven't read the fine print yet. It's in there, okay.
There is no time restriction for commencing building. I was gonna say that would be
Yeah.
infringing on like property rights.
It's not your property until you buy it.
Well, yeah, but they might have to save up after they buy the lot and then to build the house. But if you had it restrict or like an actual time frame, that might be a lot.
In section 15 of our covenant, I'll just kind of, and any lot shall be completed no later than 12 months following the commencement of construction.
Yeah.
So they just can't sit there and have it half done.
Yeah.
So we tried to cover that stuff.
And they do have to, their building permits have to be completed within a year or two. So that stays consistent. They do allow for horses, I believe. But then no more than 2 dogs.
That's all right.
Yeah. In section 9, a reasonable number of domestic household pets, such as dogs and cats, along with horses or cows may be kept.
Not
Let's look at the horses thing. So if these are 2-acre lots, right?
Yep.
Reasonably, you could have about a half a horse
Yeah.
under most farmers' guidelines. It's not a lot of ground for a horse. I just want to make everybody understand that.
I would be surprised if the design committee would approve that as such. We had it in the covenant, but yet they're going to approach us. But
What happens if I buy 2 lots?
I'd be really happy with it.
How about 5?
Yeah,
No,
yeah, right.
I mean, what are you, okay, so I want 2 lots and then I am gonna put that horse.
Well, he's saying that you got to go to the design review.
Then but then you have to build on both lots.
I would have to put a house on both. I can't combine them and just have myself a nice little acreage.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
the way our covenant is, isn't it? The way it is now?
Well, they could replat it into one.
You could replat it into one lot, according.
Yep, because then we'd want to see the services removed. And so then with the replat, that's where that would be triggered.
But you got it all in and I don't buy it for 3 years from now, once it's in, so then are you gonna replat it? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? 3 years from now, you have a buyer who wants to put 2 of them together. Aren't the city, utilities all gonna be there already?
Yeah, would require them to pull them out
Oh.
if someone did that.
If you replatted it into one.
The service lines he's talking about.
Yep. But yeah, if you wanted to have a small pasture, I mean, unless in his covenants, though, that you would have to have these things reviewed by the design review committee. So before going forward with doing that, probably want to check it off.
The issue is it's not going to
association.
come before us.
Yeah.
The design review committee is going to decide whether or not horses are okay, and if
We're-
Right. That's
Where-
correct.
Basically anything that the covenants the city never regulates. Now, when it plays into a PUD, they do we ask for them specifically because we need to know what makes it unique. So in a way, when we adopt this PUD plan, we're adopting the rules for only this area.
because normally a horse would have to be in an ag zone property in the
Yep.
city limits, and that's why.
Well, it's zoned R1. Would horses be allowed in an R1 zone?
No.
I don't think would be, would they?
No.
So it's
animals.
That's
not
why
an
we're,
issue.
that's
Yeah.
why we're doing the PUD.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Right, it's a PUD, but it's R1 too.
Yeah, they're not allowed in the R1 areas.
Right.
So, but he said cows too, and cows is not in the covenants because that.
Just gonna go there because I
Yeah.
have lots in Gary that they wanna put sheep and goats for milk. So I'm just telling you what's coming down the
Yeah,
road for
yeah.
you, so is that
Get
something?
ready, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I've had people ask, and that's what the city of Gary is getting asked right now, is can they have a goat? So,
Right now, they can't.
Are you kidding?
Well, isn't the R1 more restrictive?
Yeah, it's the most restrictive. All right.
Public hearing is open. Is there any other questions for the applicant, or is there anyone else from the?
so Brandy, my question about the little purple or the dotted line, that is the buildable space for the house then? Is that what you're
Yes.
telling me? Okay.
And then let's get to that accessory structure. In those covenants, it should specify, but I believe that that is for any of the structures need to be within that envelope, right? Just the primary, and that has to do with utilities. So if it would be if an accessory structure was wanting utilities, they would most likely have to be within that envelope.
Is that right? That's what I was curious. I mean, if I decide to put the accessory structure outside that box, I might not be eligible to get certain utilities.
This is Bert Maxted. The issue with these extremely deep lots is, I'm assuming they're not going to be cheap. So whoever can afford these isn't going to build a small house. They're going to have 2, 3 air conditioners. They're going to have this, they're going to have that. When you drop a transformer at the edge of the road, in that service after the downstream, that transformer gets so long, you're going to get a significant voltage drop. And what will happen is every time an air conditioner turns on, their lights are going to blink. And then they're going to call us and say, how come my lights are blinking? Because your house is too big and the transformer is too far away. So we either have to move the transformer closer, which means running primary and having to loop them in and out, so we have to duplicate facilities when we do it. There's just a lot of additional costs that we don't feel we should have to concur. So that's the reason for that. Now, if they built an auxiliary building, a shed, outside of that area, odds are it's going to be closer to the road. But they're going to have to come out of their meter. We're not going to have 2 or 3 meters on each lot for every little thing. So he's going to have to come out from his own meter and run it. So it's just going to start to compound his own problem. So he's going to have to size his wire accordingly. That's all. And then that's the main reason. We just don't want these, they're 750 foot deep, I think, something like that.
Same question if I was gonna run a long water line further, farther, an individual like to the garage, a mudroom or something, and I'm gonna be 600 feet back from the road. Is that gonna be an issue for you guys?
No, because the water line, the water service is going to be the customer's responsibility to put it in. So if they want to do a 1-inch copper, that's fine. But if it's going to be 600 foot long and they're going to have an irrigation system, most likely they'll put in a well for that, I assume, because the covenant says you can do that. But if they wanted to do a small irrigation system or something, they might have so much of a pressure drop, they're going to notice it. So it's going to be to their advantage whenever they're building their structure to size their facility accordingly. Maybe they have to put in a 2-inch line, something of that nature. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, on the water part, yes. And I'm assuming there's probably some issues with the sewer too, having them that long, just because of the way the grade is for gravity flow. It might be another issue, I'm not sure.
Would they have to put in their own lift system if they needed it?
That's up to the city. That's not my department.
Oh.
If they did like their own private grinder pump or whatnot for individual, depending on what they design.
But the reason I came up here, on page 35, just more for a clarification, has nothing to do with utilities. I just caught this when I was glancing through. Section 3, mobile homes and campers. No mobile homes or campers are permitted. No mobile homes or campers are permitted or allowed. Only an unoccupied camper may not be stored on a lot while not in use, but only in a garage or on an owner's property. So what is it? Just more for clarity, what is it? Can you have it here or can't you have it here? Because the one sentence says you can't, and that last one says you can.
No
So
mobile home permitted.
that's all.
Shouldn't it say no mobile home camper or campers are permitted or allowed instead of an and statement? And then an unoccupied camper may not be stored on a lot on a lot except only in a garage or on the owner's. Is that what you're trying to say, Steve?
Well, yeah, I think, we gotta clarify it. I mean, they can pull a motor home in and put it in their driveway as such. I was trying to say that that's not the primary residence. There's gotta be a house there. So that needs to be reworked, I agree.
So you're saying that no mobile homes or campers are permitted to be located on the lot as an individual structure or something. That's what you're trying
That's
to
right,
say.
yeah. That's
And
what I
then
was trying to say there.
furthermore, you're saying if it's unoccupied and I want to store it, it has to be stored in a building.
That's correct.
That's what your intent is.
Right. So if they if they go for 6 months and come back, they gotta have that, you just can't put that camper sit outside for 6 months. Right.
Not even if it's on a pad, be like by the garage?
That's not the way, that's the way we have it so far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
You're
you
being-
do though,
you're-
you have it so it can be on their property, so.
Right.
So Colin can clarify that and get us, we can get
Yeah.
that amendment made.
Right.
Right.
We have to tweak that. It's,
Yeah. That's a good catch. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's what your intent is.
that's right. And then the same thing, I think we'll just take the horses out of there, so it's not gonna be an issue, But actually, to tell you the truth, in section 9, way it reads correctly now, it says, life of a reasonable number of domestic household pets, such as dogs and cats, along with horses or cows may be kept.
Oh, for real?
So we're gonna knock out the cows too, okay? You didn't see that, but it's in there.
Well, you must have an old version,
Do I?
because I have it at section 10, I think, don't worry,
Okay.
I'll grab it. It's, I gotta go around.
Section 10 says it, but I don't see anything about cows in there.
Is mine an old one then?
It might be, because, see, on my section 10, yours is section 9.
Oh, yes.
Then it just says horses.
Oh, sure. Well, then we'll knock that out instead. Okay. Good.
So then we just have to, but it still does state that about the
Right.
campers and stuff, so we'll just make that change.
Make that correction.
And then if there's any other, when you look through them, if there's any other minor revision that needs more clarification, as long as it's nothing major, then Colin can just make that. And if it's something,
This is Ford. I have a question.
Diana. asking questions.
Go ahead, Diana.
I'm waiting until he gets back in his chair.
exactly. Okay,
Oh.
Diana has a question for you now that you're back in your chair.
Okay.
I always have concern about the word reasonable number. As Brandy would know, I like definitions and I like specific things. The reasonable number of household pets.
Again, I think, this is covenants. I mean, we have no discretion under this covenants. This is the applicants. So that we're not approving these covenants. These covenants are just there for our own understanding of what's going on.
You know what? I can't hear a thing you're saying because the sound is so bad. So could you say that again?
I'm
please?
sorry, Diana, I'm saying, I understand, I agree with you on the whole reasonable thing, but covenants are not something that we enforce, nor are we approving by this action. This is just the covenants that Mr. Horning is saying that he's going to apply to his property. The city does not have any authority in establishing covenants on private property. So I agree, reasonable is, but that's something that Mr. Horning is going to have to enforce. It's not something that the city will enforce.
So we've been discussing all this time for something we don't have anything to say about or no approval over? Why are we talking about it then?
To get a better understanding of what's going to happen out there.
Well, I'd like a better understanding of what reasonable is then. Same thing.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying.
I know. I'm just explaining my point. So it is part of what we've been discussing, trying to get a better idea of what's going on out there.
So
Part of that is what or who determines what reasonable is.
the design review committee for the association. And they can only have up to 2 dogs, so it's more so just cats. And he's removing horses, but that is up to the design review committee.
How about llamas, Steve?
No, I'll just answer.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I think to Commissioner Ford's point, and maybe it would help if Brandy would highlight some of these items, but, you know, really, the item we're on now is the PUD plan. Within the PUD, there's obviously covenants that the developer is going to implement, but maybe there are other PUD plan items that are more board affiliated that maybe Brandy should walk through. She's got the list, she's pulled up right there. But maybe there are some details to that PUD plan that we should look at that maybe are more board affiliated as far as your input or feedback or suggestions might be concerned, if that helps steer the conversation a little bit.
Right. Good point, Heath. So, and Diana, would that be ideal?
Sure, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So, in the ordinance for when you're going with the PUD zoning district, then for the PUD plan, we ask for the 6 items. And so down at number 6, then we say covenants and restrictions, if any, applying to each tract into open spaces and including the responsibility for the maintenance and operation of common areas and facilities. So that is where, when we are looking at it, where we get more specific when they talk about the maintenance of the detention ponds, and then also specifying the setbacks. So in those portions of the covenants that are more applicable to what we need to be looking at, and I'm glad that Heath steered us there, let me find that section where they talk about the maintenance, detention pond maintenance here under section 8, that ordinary maintenance such as lawn mowing and debris removal shall be performed by the owner of the lot, which that performed of the pond occupies, or with that portion of the pond occupies. The homeowners association shall be responsible for extraordinary maintenance and repairs as necessary. The city shall have the right to inspect and require repairs as necessary. And so we'll still enter, when we do the plat, we'll still enter into a BMP maintenance agreement, but it'll be if the owner is not being responsible for the maintenance that needs to happen and it's causing issue, then the city can intervene and then perform the maintenance and assess it back to those property owners that are responsible, which would be the association.
Does the city attorney review the homeowners association documents prior to the developers agreement going into place?
We would in a PUD.
Okay.
Otherwise, too, with the open spaces, then that's where the building envelopes came into place of an actual minimum and maximum setback requirements. So, which isn't typical for our conventional zoning districts. So those are the 2 that mostly apply to what we should be looking at with the covenants. We'll leave the other items to their design review committee. And I'm referring to the association.
But in other words, staff has reviewed the plan, the PUD plan, and it's basically in comports with all aspects of the zoning regulations.
It works for their PUD. So there's, and when we look at the definition of a PUD, so a PUD district, the purpose is to, right here, to permit great flexibility in the uses and design of structures and land in situations where modifications of specific provisions of this ordinance will not be contrary to its intent and purpose. And so that's really looking at the rural residential. That's what they're trying to achieve. We don't have that district yet. This might be a really nice starting point to putting that just as a conventional district. because it does adhere to our engineering design standards of the density requirements and what we would like to see. We would need to see the building envelope type situation there with setbacks. So this would be a good starting point, and it is also in our comprehensive land use plan that we do create a rural residential district so that we can allow for densities like this, just as long as it's making sense as far as what type of infrastructure we're requiring.
We need to probably identify good locations as well, where we would want to steer that growth.
Yeah. Yep, and it's nice to see with the proximity to the lake that we wouldn't have such dense development.
Mr. Chair, this is Stacy, Community Development Manager. I do have one comment if I could.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Brandy, for bringing up that density. One of the things that I'm sitting here wondering, the density of this development is assumed to be the 1 acre within the PUD. And I know that that is stated within the covenants, but one, I guess, consideration that I thought about was having that stated in the PUD ordinance or on the face of the plat or somewhere where that couldn't be amended, because the infrastructure, I understand, is really being put in to handle the 1 acre lots, and that would essentially prohibit lot splits in the future. So we wouldn't get into more density. I know we have the building envelopes, but do we have any place that specifies those 1 acre lots and how a request in 10 or 20 years would be handled for like a lot split?
Yes, I believe that they have that shown. Net density is 0.6 per acre.
Okay, so they do have that on there, but that's something we can address in a future phase as well. Just a consideration I wanted to bring up for the Plan Commission and taking a look at this, because I could see the density becoming a factor at some point in time down the road. But thank you, Brandy, for mentioning that and clarifying that. And like I said, there is time to get that clarified and addressed, so it's very easy for the city to administer that in the future.
Yeah. Would you take, Stacy, this is Todd, would you do that at the developer's agreement? That would just be stipulated that the density of this development is not going to be any greater than what's being proposed within the plan itself?
I think it could be done in the development agreement, Commissioner Kays. I also think it could be a note on the plat itself. That seems to work really well. People don't tend to miss those notes on the plat. Now, I wouldn't say that a lot couldn't be re-subdivided to move a lot line or something, but something that decreases that density below 1 acre or increases it rather. And decreases the lot size, I think that's something that we would want to avoid.
Agreed.
I think that we could just clarify by putting another note on in the development agreement when we plat it, on the face of the plat, or also I think with this PUD plan, that we just specify, it just says right now that the net density is 0.6 units per acre. But let's just say that shall not exceed 1 house per acre, because, or was that backwards? It's backwards. So.
Well, I honestly think that's great, Brandy, to have it in several places. So that way in 20 years, the staff would be able to find it easily, and everything would be consistent.
And probably the plat.
Thank you.
The plat from a chain of title would probably be a good spot.
Yeah.
To have it, so people might not know where to look at in the plan.
Right. Yeah, and the PUD plan isn't recorded. So I think for public knowledge that will be the appropriate place. So good point, Stacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to comment on the PUD, or does the board have any other questions for staff or the applicant? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on in the agenda, 6C is commission consideration of an application to utilize building material not listed in the G1 Downtown Overlay District. Brandy, will you take over?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So this item, we are looking at our downtown overlay district for the aesthetics. And, you know, we created this in 2019, and we kept it open-ended, knowing that new materials would become available, and we didn't want to necessarily prohibit something that might be aesthetically pleasing. And actually, now we can get, Jason, if you can hand out that letter, it's time. And then Todd, you can pass the material. We have a skit. So basically what we're looking at is the generations on first structure. So originally let me pull up the reference here. Originally we were looking at doing a stucco material, but now this material here, which is an architectural metal paneling that's coming around, it would be this brand or something similar. And so as you guys already know, the main floor or the first 12 feet of Generations on First already does have the brick facade. So it's still creating that historic value that we wanted to attain. And then when they go, there's 5 floors or 5 stories in Generations. And so then they would like to do some contrasting of the different materials. Obviously, as you can tell with the Lofts project or Parkside Place, that the developer, Jesse Craig, does take aesthetic, he wants it to be aesthetically pleasing. And then there are also maintenance components that this is more durable and resistant, that you're not going to get somebody or something that is needing a lot of maintenance and then still looking nice. And you can get, there's, as you guys can see and what I've passed around, the developer did provide that to show you guys, so you had a real life example of the material that he is interested in implementing. So with that, basically the action that we would be doing here today would be, I'll show you here. So for the building construction, in order to preserve the integrity of the downtown overlay district, if any similar material not approved by the building official, which meets the purpose to maintain and preserve the historic architecture and aesthetics, the application shall be submitted and approved by the Plan Commission, who shall consider the following factors. And then that would be the adverse impacts to the integrity of the property or structures to be minimized, changes to the defining characteristics of the building or site. It's a new construction building, so that's not the issue. Removal of historic materials and features, again, new construction. Historic materials should be retained where possible, where not feasible. Compatible materials should be encouraged. And then the proposed work should be compatible with the property or structure itself, as well as the surrounding neighborhood or district. Consideration shall be given to the exterior design, site layout, proportion, detail, scale, color, and texture and materials. And this Generations on First is also not within the State Historic Preservation District, but we still, because it is adjacent, we still reach out to SHPO and give them the we show them what the application is, and then ask for their determination that if it is impactful. And so initially we reached out to SHPO, and they had made the determination. That's the letter that I had passed around. They had made the determination that it would not negatively impact the the district, basically, and that it's not inside it. And then when I sent them what they were looking to do now with this updated rendition, it was the same determination, that they did not see that it would have any negative impacts or adverse impacts on the historic district. And I think it's okay, like with our downtown overlay district, that we would review something like this, because for for this building, it's 5 stories tall. It still has the brick facade, and the rendering, you know, it does look aesthetically pleasing. So
So you're
I
just
think
at-
it's good that we're reviewing them case by case.
So are you asking us to say, is this okay, or you guys are?
Yes, you guys, that would be, it has to be approved by the Plan Commission. So if there's a material not on the list of encouraged materials, and we left that open-ended so that we could have flexibility on a case-by-case scenario, because maybe this material is okay for generations on First, but would we like to see the Goth resided with this material?
I always think, you know, when it's within the SHPO boundaries, I feel like I just like to lean on them, and if they say it's okay, to me, it's hard for me to say, no, it's not.
I would move that we approve this for this building.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion?
I just have one question. Sorry. The picture that he had included, is that the material he's going to use in the colors?
I think Jesse's has been online waiting for this moment.
I mean, I'm just wondering if that's
But
what
he's
he's
not.
actually doing, or is he still changing colors?
It will be that color scheme,
Okay.
I believe. He wants to do the contrasting, and I think with that darker, he was online. He's been saying that has some service issues, so he's been on and off.
No, that's fine. That was my only question.
Motion is this material specific to this building, not carte blanche.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
if I could ask Brandy for point of clarity, this building is not in the historic district, but adjacent to it. Is that correct, Brandy?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make that point of clarity. Even though it's not in it, it is adjacent to it, and those adjacent to it, SHPO does still chime in on recommendations.
Yeah,
But just wanted to be a point of record, it's not within the historic district.
correct. And so not within SHPO's, the State Historic Preservation District, but it is within our downtown overlay district. So that's why then we're reviewing it further. But then, yeah, sometimes buildings that are adjacent to the SHPO district can still affect the district, so it should still be checked off by the state office.
I'm going to come back just before we do it, Mr. Chair. Is staff looking to have this to be more applied to anything similar to this request in the future? If it's in a nearly identical request, I'm okay if you have a similar identical request that we don't have to see it, but if there's something different, you know, then maybe that's when you come. I don't know if you want to allow this everywhere or.
We'll let the building official make that call because we do allow for that flexibility in the ordinance.
Okay.
So, and with it being a new district, that's why we have it in front of you, because, you know, for one person to make that call, it's kind of a lot of pressure. So to bring it to the board, and so it'll just be on the level of comfort that staff has. Obviously, I'm sure Jason would discuss it with Stacy and Heath and decide where to go from there. But if it is a tough call, they're going to bring it to you, I'm sure.
Well, I think
Would imagine.
if it's a similar situation where it's not under the purview or the purview of the SHPO says it's okay, there's no reason to bring it back to us on individual case-by-case basis.
Okay.
That's my intent.
I'd agree with that. You know, like I said, if SHPO sends us a letter, even if it's outside their jurisdiction, and says that they're good with it, I'm not gonna buck them.
Sounds good.
But we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any other discussion or further clarification? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 7 is open public comment. We've scared most people away. Bert, want to come up and talk? Oh, no. All right. All right, hearing no open public comment, we'll move on to new business. We did add, when we approved the agenda, to discuss decks and pools.
And the only discussion I want to have on that is just instructing staff to take a look at that over the course of this winter, maybe bring us back something to react to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think with how the ordinance reads now, I struggled to not call it a play set, but, so yeah, no, well, I think that's enough is said, and, well, we can look at it when we got something drafted. So, any other new business?
Yes, so this will just be a quick one here. That's second. So, we just wanted to bring up, we wanted to know if the Plan Commission was interested in initiating staff to look into our current I-1 and I-2 district, or the I-1 and I-2 district lot sizes, the minimum lot size requirement. Because right now, for our I-1 light industrial, we require 30,000 square feet, and then for I-2, we require 220,000 square feet, which is 5 acres, which is a bit egregious.
I've had a little bit of conversation with Stacy about this. I personally feel that the 5 acres is fine for the conditional uses that are listed in the zoning regulations. So if I want to have a soap fertilizer plant or an acid something, I think large lots are fine. I think I would say that if there's any use allowed in the I-1 zone, that they could follow the I-1 zoning requirements, is what I would recommend.
Okay.
Because the I-2 by itself was really intended for those really most intensive uses, and if you look through the list of 12 or 13 uses, you're going to want them on larger lots, separated. I mean, feed lots and some of the other things that are on there, you're going to want them on bigger areas so that you can have more areas for separation between other uses.
The only permitted use in the I-2 zone is any permitted use in the I-1 zone.
Yeah.
So there's, if we're saying that, yeah, I see what you're saying. So just the conditional uses is where you would think.
With the 5 acres, and then everything else could just meet the I-1.
Everything else is an I-1 use.
Yeah, I think that would be a simple fix.
No, that makes sense. I could concur with that.
Okay.
It wouldn't be, it's not a lot of work for you then.
Love that.
Any other new business? Or is there any other comments I should ask from anyone else on the board?
yes.
We all just let Todd talk and.
Did Stacy, if she's still online, did you have anything to add with that? Or I guess we can just kind of take that direction and then do more research or put it together in a very easy ordinance amendment?
I don't really have anything to add. I think that gives us some good feedback. We were thinking about, I think some of those conditional uses, it could be very easy to state, as Commissioner Kays mentioned, that the 5 acre minimum applies. But then the uses that are also pertinent in the I-1 and allowed in the I-2 as well could basically keep the 30,000 square foot. The reason this, I guess, got brought up was some of the medical cannabis establishments came into play, and Councilman Bruce Bueller brought this up because some of the uses will not require 5 acres in size. The same thing with, say, for instance, an office or a welding shop or something of that nature. It's kind of tough because we want to encourage people to re-subdivide where appropriate, so we don't end up with access issues or utility easements in the middle of lots and that type of thing. But with a 5 acre, it does seem egregious and difficult to accomplish if someone was looking to have a piece of property for private ownership for, say, a welding shop or something of that nature. And I think by lowering these altogether, except for some of the very large uses that were mentioned earlier in the more intense uses, I do feel that we would be able to gain better compliance with folks subdividing and having those options out there. So that kind of came up just to be able to accommodate some of these uses that didn't require the 5 acres. And then that way they could come through the subdivision process rather than try to look at splitting a piece off by a deed, which is very heavily discouraged with all the issues that can come with that.
Makes sense. That does.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else from the board have any comments on that?
Thank you, Stacy.
Let the staff run with it. All right, well, let staff run with it. I think we have one more piece of new business.
Yes, and so this should be exciting. I sent an email yesterday. And so it's for the South Dakota Planners Association annual conference. So it'll be held in Rapid City. And I handed out the agenda there. And then on the back side is the registration form. And so if you are interested in going, did I say October 26th to the 28th? So that'll be a Tuesday to Thursday. And the conference starts Wednesday morning. And actually, we, because of our topic about the whole city-county relationship with plating and road maintenance, there is actually a specific topic on that. So there's also, I have the list there on the agenda of the different topics, or whatever. It's been a long day here. I'm losing my thoughts. But whatever, there's different topics there. You can look through, see if you're interested. I think that it's always good to, if you don't learn something from the topics or the different sessions, that's what I'm looking for, then it's just networking and getting to kind of bounce ideas off of people. So let me know, and this is a very short turnaround time, but the block reservation for the rooms ends September 15th. So if you could think about it over the weekend and then let me know by Monday, and then we'll get rooms reserved and then accommodate with the registration and everything too. So let me know if you're interested.
Brandy and I are going. Not together, but we're going.
Yeah, we, Todd.
Thank you for the clarification. Let the record
Okay,
show
but aren't we riding
they're
together,
not going
actually?
together.
Come on.
All right.
Yeah, so it should be a good time. And a good time to be out west, fall colors, hopefully no snow. There might be, though.
Awesome. Any other new business?
None that I have.
Any old business?
No.
Any reason to go into executive session?
No.
I'll adjourn the meeting. We are adjourned.